Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm your host, Todd Marquardt, here with Joseph Warren, who's a financial planner with his company called Financial Planning HQ, and he's helping sponsor the show today. And we've been talking about Social Security, retirement, whether to take it early, on time, or late. Then we talked about the debt ceiling. And now we're going to be talking about Justice Clarence Thomas, United States Supreme Court Justice, and whether he violated any rules when he didn't disclose that he got to ride on somebody's airplane. Okay, so what type of ethics standard would you hold to Justice of the Supreme Court? And do you think he should be held to a higher standard than other branches of government, like President of the United States or House of Representatives or Senate? Give us a call. Tell us your opinion about whether Clarence Thomas did something wrong. 210-308-8867, 210-308-8867. So what happened, the allegations against Justice Clarence Thomas are that a businessman named Harlan Crow had provided his private airplane for Justice Thomas to ride on out to a ranch owned by a company that Harlan Crow owns, and whether the ride on the airplane or the stay at the ranch should have been disclosed on a special form that federal employees have to disclose where they get gifts from. And so I found on the internet this document called Filing Instructions for Judicial Officers and Employees. And the rules changed. So in 2021, there was one rule, and then it was just updated in March 2023. So I was asking on Facebook, I wanted to compare this to the chapter in the Bible, Judges, in the Old Testament. And so I asked my Facebook friends, what's the ethical standard for judges in the Bible? And you might suspect what the answer was. What would you say?
The ethical standard for judges in the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
I know it would have been very high.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one person said God's law, the Mosaic Code, and so that's what everybody had to abide by.
Yeah.
But I know that some of those judges were not that good.
Yeah. That's what the law was. It's very strict.
Right.
Old Testament law.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's not really a good way to compare our judges today with the judges back then. But I did find that Clarence Thomas does post his financial disclosures online. At least there was some company that gets that information, probably from Freedom of Information Act. And he has to report all of his income from every source.
Wow.
Like you were saying, you would hope that there would be transparency.
Yeah, I think that's what people want, transparency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the financial disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
So, Joseph, while I'm looking up the difference in the rule here, tell us some other things that you would expect from judges.
It says you want a judge to be as impartial as possible. So, of course, bribery, things like that are not good. Money can influence people's decisions. I think if you give someone a gift, a lot of the times, sometimes you feel beholden to them, depending on people's personality. But someone gives you a huge gift, like $100,000 or something. There's some level of strings that are probably attached to that gift. So financial transparency would solve a lot of that. And I guess just the wherewithal to make the best decisions, something in place to just make sure that, ethically they're doing the right things, and
Right.
they can make good decisions at the same time. I think there's
Mhm.
like making sure they're mentally fit as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So in this section for gifts, in this financial disclosure reporting form, these are the instructions. It says report information on gifts aggregating more than $415 in value received by the filer, the person filing, spouses, and dependent children from any source other than gifts from a relative. So if your spouse received a gift from somewhere, or if your child, a dependent child, received a gift from somewhere, you'd have to report it. But if your spouse gives you a gift, you don't have to report that.
Yeah.
A gift is a payment, advance, forbearance, rendering, or deposit of money, or anything of value, unless consideration of equal or greater value is received by the donor. So that would be like if I bought something from you. That's not really a gift.
Yeah.
And then in the next paragraph, it says food, lodging, or entertainment received as personal hospitality need not be reported. And so that's what the argument is for saying that Justice Thomas didn't do anything wrong, because at the time, this was the rule.
Yeah.
Up until March 2023. And so this was a personal friend of his. It wasn't anybody else. I guess they need to define what personal hospitality is. Okay, well, in the next sentence it says personal hospitality means hospitality extended for a non-business purpose by an individual at the personal residence of that individual or his or her family, or on property or facilities owned by that individual or his or her family. So being at Harlan Crow's ranch presumably would not have violated this law or this rule.
Yeah.
Now it does, because there's the updated form, which I'm trying to find here. I got to scroll through all these pages. But we do want to hear from ladies and gentlemen of the audience. Do you think that receiving airplane rides and stays at ranches would be considered an inappropriate gift, even if it's a friend? Give us a call at 210-308-8867, 210-308-8867. Something else that allegedly happened was Harlan Crow paid for a grandnephew to have some private school tuition. Well, under that rule that I just read, says that only gifts to yourself or your spouse or dependent children have to be reported. And so since this grandnephew was not in any of those categories, he didn't report it.
Wow.
And so do you think that's something that people should complain about? Is it inappropriate?
Yeah. He probably wouldn't have gotten the gift if he wasn't who he was. That's what I would say. But just like if it's
They're
written,
friends.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, he has high friends, right? You're Supreme Court. You have friends who like have a lot of sway, influence. But at the same time, if that was the law and it wasn't required to be reported, he would have just been wasting his time by reporting it.
Yeah,
So
because he didn't have to.
Yeah.
And Justice Thomas made a statement that said that Harlan Crow was not trying to influence him and there was no business before the court.
Yeah. That's another consideration. Like, is it right before
Right.
a court case?
Yeah, so it's important that there is somebody watching, because you don't want judges to be bought off, right? That would be bad.
Yep.
Okay, so the new rule says a gift is a payment, advance, forbearance, rendering, or deposit of money or anything of value unless consideration of equal or greater value is received by the donor. That's the same. Personal hospitality need not be reported. Okay, That seems like the same thing. Oh, but here's a change. Gifts received from a relative. I'll have to get back to you on that. But there's other people I want to discuss. So you can still weigh in on this. Email me, leave me a message, go to Facebook, drop a comment, or find the video on YouTube. In fact, you can watch a whole lot of videos on YouTube. Joseph has a lot of videos on YouTube. You can learn about financial planning, right?
Yep.
What are some of the other videos you have?
Some videos I have are that people like. I think nowadays Social Security is huge. Debt, different ways of paying off debt is something that people think about a lot. And then minimizing taxes.
Okay, so you have a video on debt.
I do, and that's actually a short video. Very
Okay.
short, yeah.
And then you have one on taxes.
Minimizing taxes is something that a lot of people are interested in.
In retirement?
In all stages of life.
Oh,
Either
okay.
as a business owner, there's a lot of stuff you can do, or in retirement as well.
Okay, cool. I'll have to check that one out.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered, since this is our fourth segment, I'd like to talk about legacy because attorneys at Marquardt Law Firm do last wills and living trusts and tax-protected inheritance plans, and all that relates to legacy, at least in my mind. So, you know what that means.
And now, it's time for the Talk Law Radio Legacy Spotlight. What's your legacy? Sponsored by Marquardt Law Firm.
Joseph, I'm wondering, what's the legacy of the United States going to be? Is the United States going to have a reputation and legacy for being drowning in debt?
Yeah. At a certain point, it becomes unsustainable. I don't think, because you think about it, you just keep printing money. Inflation gets out of hand. Mm-hmm. Things are not going to be, your currency won't be worth as much. And there's a lot of threats happening now with other countries forming alliances around their currency. Mm-hmm. I don't see that as a big short-term threat. I think long-term, though, if you see this playing out the same way with no changes, it would be a bad legacy. But I love a redemption arc, so I'm hoping, there's some cuts in spending. The government has a knack for spending a lot of money on things. So you sometimes hear about like $3,000 chairs and stuff they're spending money on. Just some reasonableness there. Maybe slight increases in taxes that make sense, which I'm more conservative, but I think a small amount would be needed that makes sense. And from there, you could start to make the situation better, improve it over time.
Good. Well, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah,
it's awesome talking about the debt, judicial ethics, and Social Security. And you can be with us this week and every week. Tune in at 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays. And if you miss an episode, check out my podcast or go to YouTube. And remember to subscribe to YouTube and click the little bell so you get a notification whenever a video gets dropped. I'm Todd Marquardt. I'll talk to you later.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.